Hello and welcome to Black Bear Atheist, Islam, or really any other religion. It basically it's claiming almost close to the same thing as Christianity, a supernatural event which they have no evidence of, which they only want us to believe through faith. It's just the different one have different ideas of what exactly happened. They have different way of defining the spirituality or whatever it is. So that's basically Islam into an extent. Another religion. So this is the guy Ali Dawah. I don't even think I'm pronouncing that right, but I don't give a fuck. I would like to play the clip, but it's quite disturbing. You know what? Why not? We all need to see what exactly we're dealing with.
This is a part of our religion. There's a reason to it. Yeah? There's a reason why there's a capital punishment. Because people like you, little weaklings, who leave their religion and cause corruption in the land by spreading it, the capital punishment in Islamic law would be applied to you. We have no doubt. And we're proud of that. Yeah? Not in
There we have it, folks, hearing it from the horse's mouth. When I say this is quite disturbing, that was quite disturbing. So today, Ali Dawah is debunking atheism and he's gonna answer tough questions about atheism in like 1 minute. Obviously, there's gonna be a lot of BS, and I'm gonna try to not pause as much.
Ali Dawah, you have 1 minute for each question.
You ready?
are you ready?
Can you prove God's existence in 1 minute?
Let's look at Google. In order for Google to exist, we need the internet. In order for the internet to exist, we need the computer or our telephones or our tablets. In order for the computer to exist, there has to be human beings that create it, and etc. It relies on electricity. The question follows is the following. Google relies on the internet relies on the computer relies on us and electricity, and this goes on. We cannot have an infinite regress of dependent things.
Says who? You can't just claim that, you actually have to prove that. You can't just claim shit and then think, oh wow, I just made something. I just did something. Look, you did nothing. You're just making a claim. You're just saying we can't have infinite regress when you don't know whether we do. Because even when you put God there, you end up with infinite regress.
We require a place where it all stops and makes sense, which is the independent, self-sufficient, necessary being, which is God.
The universe isn't there to make you feel better. The universe isn't there to make sense to you. The answer that we find in the universe might not make exact sense, might not be what we were looking for. That's why Christians, apparently, some of them don't accept evolution. It might not be exactly what they're looking for, but it's the answer. The universe isn't there to satisfy you.
Why can't the necessary being be the universe?
Well, that's good that you say that, because first it shows that you acknowledge with me that we require a necessary being. That's good. All you've done is applied this to the universe, and we say that contradicts the necessary.
No, it doesn't mean I accept that we need a necessary, a footstep or a first cause. It's just continuing with the argument and your line of logic. If God is the necessary being in your own opinion, then why couldn't the necessary first cause just be the universe? Which you can apply some of the characteristic that you put to God on the universe, actually, taking out the personal and the dumb one that you just apply.
Being, because the necessary being is independent, self-sufficient, and is necessary. The universe is not self-sufficient and dependent. It's opposite. So you can't have this be.
Or dependent on what? What's the universe depending on? God? I believe the universe is quite self sufficient and not dependent on anything as we know of.
That, because it contradicts.
Can God create a rock that he can't lift?
I mean, this is an invalid question. When people ask this question, it's like,
It's actually one of the most valid questions there is. Maybe I'm overstating this, but can God do something that seems impossible? Technically, yes. All powerful? Oh no, meaning he knows how to create a rock that he can't lift. And because of his all powerful and his miracle self, he can technically create such thing. If he doesn't want to, that's a different that's a different thing. He can though. If he can't, then he's not all powerful. You gotta understand the attributes you put into it.
It's like a valid question. I can ask a question: can God cease to exist? Of course not. It's literally. It's like me saying, how many days in a
Yes, God can cease to exist. I mean, that's basically what he did when he became Jesus and then killed himself. Can God die? The answer would technically be no. God can't die. But I guess I'm gonna go a little bit way off into the Christian terminology here. But in the Bible, you have a God actually dying and become Jesus, according to Christians. Islam, I believe it's different. They don't believe that, the Trinity of BS. That's one of the main things that they actually disagree with Christians on. So, can God die? Yes, he can. Excluding the Christian perspective on this, he can because he's all powerful. I believe they also have this attribute to God. They have to have this attribute to God because how else would they, say He created everything if He does not all powerful? So yes, and most of these questions are technically asked toward Christians who have all these attributes smacked to the God's face. But hey, Islam also have the same bullshit. So answer the question.
week? Yes or no? Yes or no? It's not a yes or no question. I have to ask how many days of the week? 7. So the point is, the question is invalid. So to say, can God create a rock so big that he can't lift? Then the moment he creates that, he becomes not powerful because he can't lift it. There's no such thing that exists. It's just the question.
And the moment He can't create that means it's not all powerful. I hope you get that part. I hope you get that part. The moment He can't create something like that, it means He is not all powerful.
Question that is asked for the sake of it.
Can't there be more than one creator?
No, because then we go back to the argument of necessary being. If there was more than one creator, then the question is, how could you have one necessary being which is self-sufficient, independent? If there is another creator, then it's dependent. It's not necessary anymore. So the question is, if there
So we're basically back to your original claim that we need a sufficient one eternal being the first cause, but you're not necessarily showing evidence of why this has to be, why this can be multiple people, and why this can't necessarily just be the universe.
there was two creators, firstly Allah says in the Quran, they would fight each other for power. Yeah? So that shows two powers fighting each other are dependent because they require more power to kill the other one. So that's why we believe there has to be one necessary being that is self-sufficient.
Why would they be killing each other? What if they're married? Why would they be killing? Well, jeez.
Independent and necessary.
God created everything. So who created God?
Well, the question is invalid. Once again, it's an invalid question. Just because somebody asks this question doesn't mean it's a valid question. Because what we say is we see cause and effect.
Is Islam right? Of course, the question is invalid because when you ask such question, you have to first look at the fact that Islam is the right religion. The question is just invalid. Am I an idiot? You see, the question is invalid because if you look at the question, it's asking about me, so it's invalid. Like, shut up and answer the question. Saying the question is invalid is really not addressing the core of the question. And I get it, there's some questions that are just stupid to ask or invalid in his own word. But like these questions are quite valid when you're given the attributes that you have given to your God.
Effect within our universe. It requires a designer. To come and say who created that designer is you haven't understood who the designer is. It goes back to the issue
That is a claim that you have to give evidence for.
of the necessary being. What's the attribute? It's independent. It is self-sufficient. It is necessary. If you are
I'm just gonna keep pausing and just say this. Prove that. Actually give evidence of anything that you're saying instead of just making a claim. I don't know why they give you a 1 minute timeline, but nobody actually gives a fuck. You can take your time to prove it. Instead of just making dumb claims. It's not like you use the entire time to begin with, because you're just making dumb claims.
Acknowledge these attributes, these three things, yeah, you need to acknowledge that the question of who created God, can God make a rock so big he can't lift, can God cease to exist, are questions that are not valid. It doesn't exist. The question you're asking.
No, actually, this question is valid because you just basically said everything we look. If you look around you, if you look around the trees that are green, that are tall, it points out there has to be a designer. If the complexity of the world points out that there has to be a designer, then the designer is obviously more complex than what he designed. Thus, the designer also needed a designer. Infinite regress, baby. That's what we get with your line of reasoning.
There's no such thing. Because if there was a God that created him, then he becomes dependent now. He's not self-sufficient anymore. So what we say is that this creator, as long as this necessary being is independent, is self-sufficient, is necessary, everything stops there.
Why Islam when there is many other religions?
Well, that's a question I asked myself before I came to Islam. Why Islam? And when I did my research and what I was born with the fitrah, there was a study done in Oxford University by Justin Barrett. He found that young kids who are not taught about Islam or Christianity or any other religion, they all had the inclination to believe in one God, not two, not three. So to me, I had that in myself, to believe in one God. But the question was, why Islam? I asked the same question to myself. And when I looked into it, I realized true monotheism in its true sense, because if you go to the Christians, they say we're monotheists and they believe three in one. You go to the Hindus, they say we believe 1 million gods is one. The point is this, pure monotheism in his worship and understanding of who God is only in Islam. Not only that, also when it comes to the Quran, it is the only script.
Yeah, that's not true. And also, I'm not going to believe that study until I search it up, which I'm not going to do. So we're just going to discard it. And that's kind of a lazy thing, but like, I've watched way too much of theist videos where they just make a claim about a study, which is nowhere to be found.
Scripture on this planet that is being preserved and has miracles that we can see. For example, if I go to a Christian and I say, look, I want to believe in Christianity, show me. You say Jesus gave life to the dead and this, that, with the permission of God. Show me. Or if you go to the Jews and say Moses did that, show me. Can they show you? No, they can't. If they come and say to us, what's the miracle of the Quran? We'll say, here's the Quran and we can show you, touch it. You can feel it, you can analyze it. Why? Because also we learn from this, the Quran is for all mankind and you can see it.
This motherfucking idiot. This idiot. If you go to the Jews and you ask them to prove this to you, and you ask, show me, and they can't show you shit because they don't have a Torah, idiot. If you go to the Christians to show you that Jesus rose from the dead, because they don't have the fucking Bible with their claim to be eyewitness account, which they will tell you it's an eyewitness account. It's not like they have that. Show me. Well, if you come to the Muslims, they will just show you the Quran because that's something. A book of fairy tale with a bunch of, splitting the moon in half. Somehow is a book we are all to believe is actually true.
You can hear it, you can examine it. But the miracles that the other prophets done, you can never prove that. That's why that was for that time specifically. And the Quran is for all times because we have a method, an oral tradition, which is the Quran, which we and many generations after us can examine. And that's what I did before I came to Islam. I examined it, I read it, I looked at the prophecies, I looked at the miracles. I said, this can be no other than by from Allah.
You told us that there are miracles of the Quran.
Yeah.
Can you please just tell us one miracle of Quran?
I'm going to be generous here. I'm going to give you 3. Yeah?
Okay.
Yeah, you have to be generous sometimes in life, The first one is, I think, very profound and very important because what we are told, for example, that in Surah Balad, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about Abu Lahab. And this is very interesting because Abu Lahab could make one statement and the whole of Islam will fall on the ground. Allah says in the Quran about Abu Lahab and his wife that they are going to enter the fire, hellfire. They're going to die as disbelievers and enter the hellfire. Now, if you think about it, Abu Lahab, he had to do one thing and disprove Islam. Because the Quran declares you're going to go hellfire, you and your wife, and you're going to die as a disbeliever. So the thing is this, they could have called, Abu Lahab could have said, hold on a second, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. There you go, your religion is false. Because your religion says I'm going hellfire. Your religion says I'm going to die as a disbeliever. I accept Islam. He didn't do it. He died as a disbeliever. To me, that is profound because he had to do one statement to disprove the whole. They wanted to stop Prophet Muhammad, yeah, with everything. He just had to do 10 seconds of the Shahada and crumble the whole religion. He didn't. Number two, there is an evidence, for example, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran about the time of Moses and the time of Yusuf alayhi salam, yeah? And Allah talks at the time of Yusuf alayhi salam, He calls the ruler a king. At the time of Moses, He calls him a pharaoh. But in the Bible, they call the time of Yusuf alayhi salam, and they call him a pharaoh. And at the time of Moses, they call him a pharaoh. This is historical error. Because when they deciphered the Rosetta Stone, it's a thing, to understand the Egyptian hieroglyphics, they found out that there was no pharaohs at the time of Joseph. This dynasty didn't exist. There was kings. How did the Quran know this? And they say the Quran copies the Bible. The Quran copied from the Bible. Why didn't the Quran copy the mistake? And how did it know that at the time of Joseph, the ruler is a king? There's no pharaohs. How did they know that? That's number.
Oh my god, I'm just dumbfounded. I like, what in the world? So the first example of some random guy that apparently didn't disbelieve or didn't believe in Islam is somehow a proof that Islam is right because he decided not to believe in, I guess, BS or continue believing in his own faith and not convert to Islam. Though what he's saying is technically right for number two, you could technically still be using Pharaoh or King to describe someone in during those times. It's not like one or the other. Though the New Kingdom, based on what I just found, though the New Kingdom, which is I believe like a new dynasty, I guess, um, started using Pharaoh more than they're using just King as a reference to refer to great king. But even prior to that, you could still see like a little mix before they actually just officially start just using Pharaoh. So technically, you could still during those time refer to them as Pharaoh or King. It wasn't like the word just came out of nowhere and everybody started using it. That's not how words work. Also, it technically talking about the Torah because the Torah is basically the Old Testament. Just has some few books that are not in there, but most of the Torah is most of the Old Testament. By the way, these are both based on a story that there's no evidence found in the around the place where evidence should be found about the story of Joseph or the Moses. If millions of people, I believe it was about millions of people, walking from Egypt to Israel, there should be tons of evidence found in between showing that this would actually happen. None.
Number two. Number three, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Rum, قُلُبَتِ الرُّوم. The Romans have been defeated. The historians say the way the Romans got defeated by the Persians, it's impossible to think, let alone them coming back to win, for them to even exist. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, the Romans have been defeated, but they are going to win. That's a big statement. That's like saying you guys together, we're going to take over USA and we're going to beat Trump. It's crazy. It's a big gamble. And after
That's not a good statement to make on YouTube, on anything, and you should probably not let him say anything anymore. That's not like based on the record. Okay, now we're just gonna keep going.
3 to 7 years or 3 to 9 years, the Romans come and defeat the Persians. These are historical prophets. These are just some. There are hundreds. Hundreds. I'm giving you just three, and I can go on.
You believe in God. So scientists couldn't figure it out.
It's the same as like the biblical prophecies. I believe Daniel was written like after the actual event, so he had some aspects of the event right because it was written after the event. It wasn't like before the event. It was just said it was a prophecy, but was written actually after some of the events that it describes. So that could have happened in the Quran. We're not really sure exactly when it's talking about that the Persians would the Persians would defeat the Romans. I'm not sure exactly when he's talking about because the Romans took over the place and they ordered for a very, very long time until the fall of, the different side of east side, I believe, of Roman, which happened not because of Persia. So, not sure exactly what he's referring to here. But I believe this is one of the popular Islam prophecies that they want to put on and rant about, even though none of it really makes sense.
But you could. Is that right?
It's not about I could. We use our logic. We use our brain. The science deals with the five senses, what it can see.
Oh, please, you don't use any brain. I don't think you have any brain. I think Allah forgets to give you any brain. So you don't have a brain. Like, it's just not working. Something is not functioning well.
Empiricism. So what we say is very simple. There are scientists who believe in things. If you're talking about, for example, I don't see God, that's why, I don't believe in it. It's not something, science doesn't talk about the supernatural. It stops the physical. But we know, for example, scientists have discovered recently dark matter. Dark matter is something they cannot see, they cannot touch, they cannot feel, they cannot smell, they cannot hear. So the same thing with God. Can you see God? No. Can you touch God? No. Can you smell God? No. Can you hear God? No. Can you see God? No. But you reject his.
Well, technically, you can see God. Apparently, we saw Jesus. Jesus is God. I guess I should stop really bringing questions like doing this, but it's basically close related. Let's go to Islam. Can you see God? Can you touch God? Probably Muhammad got a message from a angel closely related to God. So can you technically hear God indirectly, directly? Yes. Because then how do we know your message is from God if you cannot apparently hear God? Anyway, scientific discovery based on actual evidence and facts, it's not the same thing as your fairy tale. And here's why, because your fairy tale have no evidence to back it. It's the same as how Christians or any other religion, including Muslims, would try to come around and say evolution is true, evolution is not true, or all these other scientific discoveries are not true. You gotta actually understand your position and know that you're the one coming from a fairy tale perspective. You gotta humble yourself, which is something these people can't do to save their life.
Exist. But the same thing with dark matter, same thing, but you say no, dark matter exists. How does it, what kind of contradiction is this? First, God doesn't exist.
Contradictions? Contradictions? I'm sorry, when the evidence leads to something like a god, scientists will be honest enough to go ahead and point it out. I said there hasn't been any. All we have of, you know, the existence of God are arguments made by idiots like you.
Because I can't sense, touch, feel. But dark matter, contradiction. Why do you have double standards?
It's not double standard. Also, we should be able to sense God. We should not necessarily touch, see, but we should be able to see His effect. If you're saying He created everything, meaning He can interact with the universe, so we can see what God has done and His interaction with the universe. Um, there's no evidence of that.
This is the issue. As a scientist, it's not something I discovered new. I use my logical reasoning and rationality to come to simple conclusions. And I don't need to be a scientist. I don't care how much big of a scientist you are. There were people
Shut up. You don't use logic and you don't use reason. It's not part of it's not something that should be coming out of your mouth. It should be taken out of your vocabulary. Like you don't use any of that.
who believed in God that were scientists. Like Einstein.
Einstein did not believe in your God. Uh, oh my God. Einstein did not believe in your God. Yes, there's scientists who actually believe in God, some sort of divine being, today even, but that doesn't mean it exists. Doesn't mean God actually exists. That's their personal belief. When they go into the lab, they leave out their personal beliefs. At least some of them. We know people like Lennox. John Lennox exists and is doing bullshit. A mathematician that turned into a philosopher, an ethic guy, and like a genius overnight, apparently, who Christians apparently are not worshiping. Anyways, Christian YouTubers, let's be specific. So, the scientists who are Christians, and that doesn't prove they're Christians, Muslims, and any other religion. That doesn't prove that God actually exists. It doesn't really prove or show anything.
You know, he did believe in a higher power. So this issue of science or scientists and God is not contradictory. You can have scientists who
Yes, it is. It's contradiction at every little standpoint. Science deals with facts and things we can actually study, while religion deals with things we can't know or even study. Like the idea that can you even disprove like someone claiming that there's a teapot in between Mars and Earth? Not really, because you can't necessarily observe it from here. You have to like take a spaceship and go in between and study every single area in between Mars and Earth. Does that mean there's actually a teapot there? Just because we can prove it, does that mean it actually exists? And that's what our theists that believe in supernatural bullshit are relying on. Now, just because we can't prove it, just because science can't prove whether it's not there, means it's there. That doesn't make any sense. This is just low bar BS.
are Muslim or scientists or Christian. So yeah, it's not a discovery.
Are you brave enough to talk with famous atheists? What would you do if you encounter them?
I have no problem because, to be honest, I don't care.
Of course, you have no problem. You're not different from any other theist. You're just probably worse because you would like to kill all the atheists. You would just be denying, dancing around, denying, dancing around, denying, and dancing around. It's called don't answer any question, don't address them. I've watched about two debates. I believe it was done by Alex O'Connor, arguing with basically this guy's best buddy. I forgot his name. So arguing with him, like doing a debate. I believe it was quite. I'm not sure when it was, but they took a debate and it was quite interesting how they were not even addressing the argument that was brought up by the atheist. So we've seen what this will look like.
What atheists you are, how scientists, professors, I don't care. The same thing applies. You know, I bring my same arguments and you have to answer them. I don't care because what I'm on, I know I'm 100%
Except once they bring their argument and you actually have to face reality and the fact that there's no evidence for what you're saying, only just your dumb argument and your weird line of reasoning, and they point that out, you just go back to, well, you can't prove that there's no God. Well, you would just keep shifting the post because that's what we know for you guys to be doing. It's called being it's called lying. It's not even like they're good at it. They just lie blinkly like idiots. I just finished watching another debate between a Christian and Alex O'Connor. I forgot his name. And that's basically what he's doing. Like, it was just shifting the goalposts every time Alex tried to point something out. Even though Alex did good at the end of the day, but it was still quite difficult to have them agree on something because the Christian kept shifting the goalposts. As the same thing Muslims do when they are on a debate platform with atheists and anyone really. They just keep shifting the goalposts.
so sure, logically, rationally, that there is no way you can get out of it except that you accepting being a deist, minimum deist. Maybe theist we can work on, deism. So I don't care if you're a professor, I don't care, it's irrelevant. As long as you have aql, I hope so, we can reason, then 100% there is no way they can go.
If there is infinite time,
Yeah.
why not infinite possibilities?
It's a good question. I have to drink my water to answer this. This glass is empty. Yes? Empty. If we said infinite time.
No, the glass isn't empty. There's hair in the glass, and you just drank some water in there, so there's some liquid in the glass too. Am I being a dick right now? Yes.
Because the argument here is you give it infinite amount of time, anything can happen. This is a fallacy. Because to make the properties, argument's sake, if I like a chocolate cheesecake, not a chocolate cheesecake, let's talk Turkish, yeah? A nice sütlaç, yeah? If I want to have a sütlaç in here, and I say, let's give it infinite time, would I ever get a sütlaç?
That's because you're making it's like the same dumb argument with evolution, where literally everything that they don't like, you're making a decision on what you want, and you're saying infinite time, give me this. That's not how it works. Can the glass rot? Otherwise, if you put that glass in a forest, it's gonna have weed growing around it. But in no time, it's gonna be deep underground with a bunch of things on it. Over time, it's probably gonna like it seep into the earth and like I don't know, melt. I don't know what happened to glasses. Like over time, things are gonna happen to it, different things, and by the end, you were surprised what you get with infinite time, and you just pause it randomly after a few years like million years. But if you say you want a specific thing, like you want a dog to pee, or your dog family to be in there, like if you say some random shit, like he's saying, you can't just expect it to just happen. If you want to expect, like, you can't present the results you want and then say this is exactly what I want. Infinite time, make it happen. Like, put a pencil and a paper down, infinite time, they will somehow write. Like, that's not how it works.
And by the way, I like my sütlaç burnt on the top. Let's be specific. Would we ever get it? No, because the equation of time is irrelevant. If the components to make a sütlaç, the way I like it, is not in there, you will never get a sütlaç. It's as simple as that. Time is irrelevant. What's time got to do with it? Let's give it infinite amounts of time. Would you get Ferrari? No. Give it infinite time. Would we get a universe? No. Because the properties to make a universe or a Ferrari or my sütlaç, which is more important, is not in there. So if it's not in there, you will never get it. But hopefully after this, I will get a sütlaç. Okay.
The worst thing is to have these bozos try to be funny. It just wears you down. It makes you annoyed. It makes you just want to reach over and like knock them in the head. It just try to be funny like every second. Frank Turek does the same thing. I mean, like you're not funny. You're not funny. Just stop. Anyways, this is Ali Dawah answering tough atheist question by not answering any question and basically just dancing around and bullshitting. This is what we know them to be doing, and then they go around act like they're tough big boys and they can take on anything because they just converted to Islam. Act like Andrew Tate's like they can actually do shit. Idiots. That's all I have for you today. If you like the video, please like and subscribe. Have a lovely day, people.